Okay, and I have the pleasure of introducing our next speaker to you. This talk is titled Bespoke AI for Ontario Math Educators Design, Use, and Future by Armstrong. Cal Armstrong is a long-time math educator and the developer behind the OneNote class notebook. His work emphasizes the importance of digital solutions in personalizing and enhancing the educational journey for diverse learners, and especially teachers. His latest project has been designing a bespoke AI for math education in Ontario. He's an avid outdoorsman, a motorcyclist, and an active volunteer for his community. Welcome.
Howdy, folks. As mentioned, my name's Cal Armstrong. Don't imagine I'm going to be able to have time to answer all of your questions, so please use the email that's there. It's also going to be the last slide in this presentation. And then right where the captions are is the link to this presentation. So the presentation's link is bit.ly/fields, all lowercase, fields APR April 27. So fields APR 27, and that gives you the link directly to the PowerPoint that I'm using at the moment. If you want some background, I sort of split it into two pieces. OneNoteSchool.com is my personal blog, and I tried to keep track of what I was doing as I was developing it there from a technical aspect. The pedagogical side, the teacher side, the why we're doing this is on my LinkedIn, and that link is there as well. So how did we get here? Prior to 2018, from 2012 to 2018, I was a faculty liaison to our IT department. And it was in that moment that I created the OneNote class notebook. And having completed that, so to speak, I was looking at my next adventure, and AI was just beginning to be available within the Microsoft infrastructure. And so I spent a fair bit of time dabbling at that. The question earlier about generative AI at that point within Azure was not necessarily generative. It would respond to questions that it knew, but if you rephrase the question in a different way, it would say, I don't know what you're talking about. But you could see the beginnings of the possibilities there. And so when I went off to the NCTM conference in 2018, I talked about it there. Of course, fast forward through what Nancy talked about as generative AI came onto the screen. I was in a panel with Microsoft in January of 2023, and they were laying out their plans for AI in education. And I woke up from a terrified dream, realizing that it was going to be industry, big business, and publishers who were going to define the AI space for educators. And I found that offensive. And so I proposed to the OAME that as a leader in mathematics education, we should be the ones to define the space for AI. They said we should think about it. Very wise and intelligent organization. And so I went off to the PCMI workshop that I've been at for 20 years, and we delved deeply into AI there. And so when we came back in September, I made a formal proposal for funding for a project, and they said, sure. And so what I did was I proposed a group would work on this AI. And when I sent out invitations to people to be involved in the group, there were no responses. So I was the group, which is great. I was remarkably efficient to agree with myself. And so I tried sort of developing a process by which I could make sure that I was not doing the wrong thing. So I tried first a guardrail service. And what that means is that I threw in all of the stuff I wanted to the AI to know, and that is all that it would know. And then I started asking questions. And it was very good at things it knew, and things it didn't know, it didn't know. And I can't do that to an elementary school teacher. I can't have them ask a question and then the AI say, yeah, I don't know anything about that. So that was a failure. We learned from failure. I turned to Microsoft Azure. I am clearly a Microsoft advocate. I threw everything into Microsoft Azure. I programmed away, and it gave great answers, like really good answers. It had a really thoughtful response. It would use all the resources I was giving it. Really great answers. And it cost a fortune. That's not going to work for us. We're a user, we're a membership organization that we depend upon the funds of the members. We can't afford that long term. So in a moment of synchronicity, the same time I threw up my hands at my Azure bill, OpenAI comes out with their new API, their background door to the Chat GPT that you could use to construct an AI response. Timing could not have been more perfect, and I threw everything at that. And that has worked extraordinarily well. I have tried Anthropic, which is the Claude AI engine. It works not in the same way as OpenAI API because it doesn't have that background knowledge that you can feed it in with some ease. Mythropic, I always want to say misanthropic, and that's the wrong thing to say. Mythropic from France, the Mistral AI engine is also one that looks quite promising. But that's where we are right now. We're using OpenAI's API with all of OAME's content. And I'm a mathematician, so when I start talking about, AI is a vector space, and all we have to do is, increase the size of the vector. And that's great for me as a mathematician. To people, parents, other educators, I try to use the idea of a lens. We have ChatGPT here, and it knows a lot of stuff, but it knows a lot of bad stuff too. Its mathematical education background is based on Reddit posts, likely not where we want teachers to get their information from. So what we try to do is we put a lens from AI in front of that. We've got 50 years of the abacus and our Gazette journals, so writers who have thoughtfully written about mathematics from an Ontario perspective, talking about Ontario curriculum, all of the OAME stuff that we create as an organization to guide our ideals, growing success from the ministry. When a question is asked of the agent, it is specifically told to reply having referenced growing success. For those of you who aren't practicing educators in the K-12 space, growing success is our assessment approach. It's how we assess the student. And so it's very important to the OAME, and to me personally, that growing success is referenced at every possible moment. A more recent document, High Impact Instructional Practices, just brings the idea of things that teachers could do to improve their practice. Along with all of that is everything I could scrape off of the Ontario Ministry website. The next one, pivotal math ed research. In my proposal to the OAME, I said, someone has to design a rubric by which we'll determine what's good math research. And I'm not that guy. So right now, pivotal math ed research is the stuff that I've encountered through my work with the Park City Math Institute in Utah. They're an offshoot of the Institute for Advanced Study. So I'm fairly confident that that's likely good math research. You're welcome to disagree with me. After our presentation next Friday, where I'll be delivering this to all of the OAME members, I'll be publishing all the contents of this lens, and you can certainly engage in conversation about what you think should or should not be in there. And lastly, again, uniquely Canadian perspective, although I suppose Australia would have contributions as well, FNMNI content. Again, if I refer back to how ChatGPT is constructed, it's constructed from mostly American writing, and we do not want to have content surfacing from that when dealing with Indigenous content. That would not be appropriate. So I thank the ETFO, even though I don't think I asked directly permission, but I grabbed their content that they publish on the web for distribution, as well as the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation. So again, every time a question is asked, it goes through that lens, and an FNMI perspective is prompted within the structure. And we think that's really important. I used the royal we in this case. The last thing I did in that moment, and it's going to be covered by the caption, I asked the AI that whenever you give a response, you ask a question back to the teacher in order to prompt them to think just a little bit further. The goal of this large scale is Vygotsky's more knowledgeable other. I first started teaching 3 decades ago at a school with 120 students, and there were 2 math teachers, and the guy I started teaching with my first year retired that year. So it was me. I was alone, and I had to learn how to teach by being an aggressive learner, and having an idea of a more knowledgeable other that I could ask questions of would have been an incredible resource. Fortunately, I was on the internet. I was on Gopher, for those of you who are old enough to remember that, being able to ask questions of other people in the field because I didn't have anyone in the school. So, all right. So we're going to have you take ChatGPT for a spin. Don't tell the OAME webmaster I've done this, because this is a paid service and it's only for OAME members, and it's hidden behind the OAME paywall. But I copied it all over into my own personal website, so I'm going to give an opportunity for you guys to work on it, with the caveat that one, I'm going to turn it off at the end of the weekend, and two, everything you do, I can see. And that's, I don't know who you are, but I know you've asked the question. So my beta testers, they'll ask questions and I'll go, okay, did you ask that question? Did you ask that? Because I want to know who asked the question. I have no idea who asked the question. I know the question was asked. The way it's set up looks somewhat similar to ChatGPT. Type your message, hit send, and it gives a response. In the last 2 weeks, OpenAI has allowed us to stream the message. The way the API used to work was you'd ask the question, you get a cup of tea, and then you'd see the response. It would send it all in one package. In the last 2 weeks, finally, I was just like waiting on bated breath. It will now stream like regular ChatGPT. So that was a great improvement. Across the bottom, you'll see 4 buttons. Click to show math properly. I'm not the world's greatest programmer, and right now it produces it in LaTeX, and you have to hit the button to make the LaTeX look nice. You can export it as a Word doc. Yeah, I'm a Microsoft guy. You hit the button and get a Word doc. On the far right, toggle the toolbar. When I looked at the AI field developing, I saw a lot of teacher pay teacher approaches, that teachers go to the AI to get a worksheet, to get a problem, and so again, OAME wants to make sure that the content and the direction and the focus for Ontario math teachers is thoughtful and reasonable and considered in an Ontario math context. And so that's what we've tried to provide with those buttons. So when you ask for a word problem, it frames it in a Canadian context, deliberately, an FNMI context. And the same with each one of the others. And when you hit the toggle toolbar, it runs through another couple of buttons, and then it turns itself off and you just keep cycling through. The objective there is to make sure that Ontario math teachers have a resource that is Ontario focused and thoughtful. The middle button, Get Expectations, gets you a list of the Ontario expectations from 1 through 12. Doesn't include all the courses, and it doesn't yet include kindergarten, because I was just so incredibly, I was reading through the kindergarten, and it was just, first of all, they're hard to get in. They're just so interesting. It is, I have never taught kindergarten, but they sort of captivated my attention. I got distracted. I never actually ended up typing them in. So they are there. The other thing about the expectations is they're useless. Because when you tell an AI something, you put the expectation in, it has no context of where that fits in the flow of the student. So when you say, well, you're going to teach factoring quadratics, blah, 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 blah. So it'll drop in things that have no place in a grade 10 course. And so what I have to do is reframe the expectations so that when you use them, they are explained to the AI where it's situated in the student flow of learning. I haven't done that yet. So you're welcome to put the expectations in, but the responses will not always be to the level at which I would appreciate them. So that taken care of. I'm going to skip over the hints and tips. So for the rest of the weekend, if you go to bit.ly/2024 April 27, all lowercase, I will leave this running for you to play with. Again, it will turn off at the end of the weekend. And so try to get all your report cards written via this by the end of the weekend. Please give me feedback as you use it. The most important thing anyone can ever get is feedback. And so I think I'm leaving this open. Don't tell Greg that's been done. And also don't forward it around to everyone and their cousin, because it is a cost oriented. Going forward, math solutions for ChatGPT-4 Turbo were about 80% correct. We created a review sheet for our discrete math unit in grade 11. We set it out. And